Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 161 of the Self-Publishing Roundtable. I am your moderator, Wade Finnegan, and my co-panelists for this evening are Krishan Keller-Hanna.
Hello, all.
And Xavier Granville.
Sup, internets?
Sup. And our very special guest tonight is one Mr. Steve Scott. Now, you might remember Steve from a show a while back. He's this guy that really helps us form really good habits and write a ton. And, he's so good, he doesn't even know his social media stuff. So, he just writes books all the time. So he's also the one half of the Authority Self-Publishing podcast he does with Barrie Davenport. And just got some really good tips and things to help us write better, write more, all that good stuff. The last show he was on, we were talking about the book that he co-wrote with Hal Elrod and with Honore, the Miracle Morning for Writers. And we just wanted to get him back on to pick his brain some more. So, Steve, thanks so much for taking your time and coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Wade.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I know last time we had a lot more questions we wanted to get from you. So before we start really picking your brain, though, just to just give the folks, in case they missed that last show, I haven't had a chance to hear about you yet, just give us a little bit about your writing journey and how you got here.
Sure. I got started in February of 2012, and at the time I had a blog, and I kind of heard about self-publishing, and I looked at it as more of a, oh, lovely, I have things dinging in the background, sorry about that. So I looked at self-publishing as more of a traffic generation strategy back to my nonfiction blog. So I kind of made the rookie mistake of just slapping a bunch of blog posts together, threw it up on Amazon, and it went nowhere. And then I decided to kind of take a harder look at this model, and I really took like 4 or 5 months off, and I tried with my second book, but really the only difference is I leveraged a KDP Select program, which we all know at the time really worked like gangbusters. And pretty much as soon as that second book was published, and I did the free promotion, it came back, and that one book was generating as a small bit of income. But then I kind of looked at like that versus my blog, where I was busting my butt writing one post after another, that if I was able to kind of just completely focus on just writing short, actual nonfiction books on Amazon, I see what happens. And I've pretty much been doing it since September 2012. And for a long time, I was just putting them out there, trying to just pick these like micro topics and focus in instead of just trying to talk about one broad topic. It was more just really detailed, focus in on one particular topic. And the books are around 15 to 20,000 words. And really, it's just been a really amazing journey. I made a ton of mistakes, which I'm sure we'll get to later on in the conversation. But and that's really just how I learned the model, just by going out there and just writing a lot of books and just learning as I go along.
Very cool. Way to dive in. I love it. No fear.
Oh, definitely fear, but. I figured, like, what's the worst that could happen? Someone leaves a bunch of negative reviews. It's not like they come to my house and punch me in my face or,
you hope.
Yeah, you hope not.
I hope not, yes.
Yeah, it's a dedicated reviewer.
Yeah, exactly.
I really do not like your book.
I will find you, and I will hurt you.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So what would you say is your extra 60 books, which is a lot of books? Where do you say your area of expertise lies strictly?
I would say it's a combination of just kind of someone who's an example of hustle, just being able to do this on a consistent basis, even through the peaks and valleys. I've been able to continuously do that. And I guess that kind of relates to just habit formation. But also I would say at deep down, my heart is I'm a geek. I love kind of geeking out on data and test a bunch of things, test 10 things, and maybe 2 of them will do well. And I'm able to kind of just ignore those other 8 things and just focus in on those couple of activities and just fully leverage them. So my model really is just kind of make a ton of mistakes and see what works and just focus on those winners.
Right. And it makes perfectly good sense. I heard you talk about habit formation, which is one of the things that piqued our ears. In your writing and doing this, what did you find were your worst habits or your really big habits, and how did you change them? What process did you use to change them?
I would say my worst habits was just kind of leaving writing for whenever it happens. And I think that's just a lot of mistake that like writers make. And actually, I did that back with my blog, where I would say I'll write some articles when I get to it later today. But I found that scheduling the time optimally first thing in the morning, that was like the way I was able to get a lot of things done in a short amount of time. And from there, I'm not too sure if I mentioned this in the previous conversation, but I'm a firm believer in the Pomodoro technique, where you set a timer, you write for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break, and then write for another 5 minutes or 25 minutes, and and then take another 5-minute break. The 25 minutes, I don't think that's a hard, fast rule, but I do believe you should put some sort of clock against your writing, and then just make sure that you're just keeping it that regimented, because I know when I'm writing, probably like a lot of other people who do this activity, there's a tendency to go check Facebook or go check stats. Stats is the one thing I just always like, I'll check my book sales, because, things haven't changed in the last 5 minutes. But from there, it's easy to have the kind of the monkey mind, where you're just thinking about a bunch of things and, oh, look, squirrel, and you're just doing a dozen other things. So having that regimented ticking clock in the background just helps me keep a schedule. Now, unfortunately, the challenge is starting Tuesday, I'm going to be daddy daycare from 7 to 12 in the afternoon, take care of my son, and then bring him to a lady who will take care of him in the afternoon. So I have to completely change my habits and do writing in the afternoon. So that's going to be an interesting experience, see if I can actually become from a morning writer to an afternoon writer.
Yeah, that might be a book in itself.
It might be. How you can write any time of the day.
Yeah, I definitely have found the afternoon ones, even when you have good intentions, using the brain activity for other things throughout the day takes something away from the creative, especially on the creative side for me. So,
yeah, there's actually a concept called ego depletion, that every decision or action that you make draws from the same reservoir of like energy and willpower. So even if you're just taking care of a kid and watching Dexter, like I've been doing the last couple of weeks, it's still just taking care of a child or doing something else. It still drains you, even though you don't think you're really doing that much. And that's something I have to be conscious with. So I guess the only way I can figure out workaround is basically my workday starts at 12, and the first thing I do during my workday is write. So same principle, just 5-6 hours later.
Do you find that that's the reason why people seem to perform better in the mornings?
I think so. I think it's most people are usually their freshest at the morning, or at least after they've had their coffee or their tea. Mm-hmm. They haven't really done much, so they're pretty energetic, awake, hopefully, and then they haven't done the dozen other things that we tend to do during a given day. So it's easy to really buckle down and get stuff done right away. Just give me 1 second. I'm getting a pop up from my stupid Dropbox, so let me. I apologize. I don't know if you're hearing that dinging sound.
No, we're not. It's all good. It's all good.
Okay.
So if you were doing your writing in the mornings, like, are you kind of like the 5 to 9 kind of guy, like getting up right early in the morning, doing the breakfast thing, getting right at the writing, and then be finished around like 8 or 9 or something like that?
I tend to break it into 2 parts. So usually for me, it's the morning starts a little bit later. So 7 or 8 in the morning, do my morning routine, and to just start writing pretty much right after that. So for an hour. But I also find that sometimes the words just aren't quite there. I do like knowing that I at least got the hour block of time. But what helps me also is going to Starbucks and write for an hour or 2 in Starbucks. I find just something about kind of literally getting away from everything in my house, just putting on a pair of headphones and sitting down with my laptop. I'm kind of able to write there as well. So I do find I can split time a little bit, but you do see those people that will sit and write for 5-6 hours in a row. I find I physically can't do that. I get to the point by hour 2, hour 3, I'm just completely burnt out. So,
well, your body
time works for me.
I was going to say your body recognizes that you're at home versus in work, right? You're outside of your comfort zone. Therefore, you kind of put up this kind of aura of just having to get stuff done because, you are at work. Your body feels like you're at work. You've distanced yourself away from your comfort zone. So therefore, you're not so tempted just to fall back into those things like, hey, I got a great couch. And sometimes I'll write on it, but I purposely, when I'm doing my writing times, like if I'm getting an hour or 2 of writing in, I will go sit on the uncomfortable chair.
No, I think that's a perfect example of that. And I think I used an analogy once, but it's almost like a football player stepping onto the field where it's game time. This is the environment where I do my work, and I find that when you work from home, even if you have your own home office, I tend to watch movies at even sit at my desk. So there's a little bit of wiggle room with what type of activity you have. But where Starbucks, I go to Starbucks to work, and that really is like my work environment. But I do that there, like writing, and also do other marketing things as well. So I do try to split up, just try to have as healthy balance of writing and marketing as possible.
Well, and that's one thing, like kind of like what Wade was kind of getting at earlier. Like sometimes now that the marketing side of it, it's you have all these metrics in front of you. It's so easy just to even fall into that when you should be writing.
Exactly, and that's why I do like the Pomodoro technique, and I use it for everything, even just goof around on Facebook ads or Amazon marketing ads or whatnot. I still set a timer for that, so I know exactly how much time I'm spending in kind of each bucket of my business and my life.
That's really cool. Now, do you have like a fancy app, or do you just use the good old fashioned just a countdown clock? Or?
Give me 1 second, because it's actually literally going right now. Because
I could hear it.
It's a Time Logger 2. And what you can do is just create different categories for whatever aspect of your business. So I have like 10 different categories, including like podcast interviews. And just whenever I'm doing that one activity, I'll set a timer for that. And then at the end of every month, there's actually a pretty little pie chart that shows you exactly how much time is spent in each activity. So
wow,
if I see that 15-20% of my time spent in admin activity, maybe I should start throwing some more stuff to my virtual assistant. So I really try to keep that percentage in the 30% writing area. So I try to make sure I'm doing a good bulk of my time in writing, not just goofing off with admin or other various stuff.
That's pretty cool. What's the name of it again, one more time?
It's a Time Logger 2.
Time Logger 2.
And I know it's an iOS app. I'm not too sure if it's an Android app but if you just look up project management apps or time management apps, it should be one of the first ones to show up. I forget the exact search I did to find it.
Mm-hmm. I usually use Toggle to do the same thing.
Oh, okay. What was that? Toggle? Toggle?
Toggl.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look that one up.
Rebellious.
Time clock. It's like punching into work. Do you developing the habits to do this is different for writing than it is for anything else, like trying to lose weight or?
I think there's some specialized elements to it, but I think everything comes down to simple habits. If it comes to like weight loss, you create the habit where you write down the food you eat every single day in the food log, and create the habit where every single morning you get up and you eat this same breakfast and lunch. And I think Tim Ferriss talked about one of his books where you don't want to try to have variety in most of your meals every day. You want to just kind of eat the same thing over and over, and that's really how you lose weight. There's no guesswork as far as what you have to prepare. You just prepare the same thing over and over. And I recognize that's the most boring sounding thing to ever do. But I guess to fully answer your question, I just believe that any type of habit or any type of goal that you have, if you just break it down into what you need to do every single day, it would follow the same principles where you have a trigger for it. You know that you do X after Y happens, or you do a certain activity at a certain time of day and you schedule it in. And I know this sounds horrible I know some people get into writing because they want more freedom in their life, but I find that habits give you that freedom, that when you check in, you do your work, and you check out, you can enjoy the other things of life just as long as you know that you're doing a certain amount of effort every single day.
That makes perfectly good sense, because it isn't so much that we have to check in and do a job that wears it down, at least for me personally. It's the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, no, definitely.
In my writing career and in my world building career, I am doing things that I absolutely love and that I believe are helping other writers. Gives me that energy. But when that timer goes off and it's time to do something else, I'm out lifting weights or going to find hotels for the Ozzy concert I'm going to.
Nice.
Sick.
Nice. We should have a whole side conversation about that later, but anyway.
And then ask me about Henry Rollins as well.
I did not picture Krishan for a headbanger, but all right.
You also talked about value systems. And he's looking at me like, what? I did?
Yeah, what about?
How important is that as a writer? How important is having a value system for a writer?
I think it's really important. I feel that you should have a solid reason why you're doing this, and my reason why is right about 2 doors down. My wife and my son, so that's definitely a reason why. But as far as value, like also having a value system, make sure that you're providing for me, it's nonfiction. So providing a good solution as possible, make sure that you don't publish until you feel that's a strong book. Or if you're a fiction writer, it's important to have a value system as far as making sure you're providing an entertaining, entertaining, fun type of reading experience. So, yeah.
Something you come up with, like my value system is like your mission statement, or is this something that you develop?
For me, it's just kind of in the back of my mind. I don't really have anything formally written down. I know I've talked about it in previous books, but for the most part, it's just in my head. And I don't know if as far as systems that I have, I don't know if I necessarily have a system for that. It's just something that I always keep kind of in the back of my mind. And I do the kind of every single morning where I review what I'm actually thankful for. And I find it actually really makes me kind of mindful of the day ahead of me and why all this stuff is important. So it's not really formalized. It's just always I'm always thinking about it as I write.
When you go through in your morning as part of your ritual, is that when you do the gut check to determine whether or not you're on the right path or not?
Yeah, I do. I have a whole bunch of routines I do in the morning. So I review my goals. I do like kind of a little bit of journaling. I also, again, what I mentioned before, just kind of going over why all this stuff's important. Drink my shake, weigh myself, do all this like boom, 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 like a bunch of series of small little activities. So that's definitely part of what I do for about like 30 to 45 minutes every morning.
And you do the same thing every day?
Yeah, it's boring, but it gets results. And yeah, I do change up. There's been a lot of habits that I tried and like, this is just not working out. And I'm not afraid to completely ditch it. Like there was a fancy journal thing that was published about like 6-7 months ago, and I tried, but it was like a 10-15 minute activity. I'm like, geez, this is not providing any value to me. So I just literally took the book and just chucked it across the room and said, all right, I'm just going to do something else. Because if you find that you're doing something for 6-7 weeks and you just don't feel it's helping your life, then don't be afraid to completely cut the cord and get rid of it. It's not like you have to it's not, these morning routines or habits are not designed to torture yourself, but if you find that you're getting benefit from that, definitely go with it.
Cool. Okay. I think about it, like with our day job, we tend to fall in those routines, whether we consciously did them or not. We just, I think human beings by nature a lot of times are routine oriented, but I really like the mindfulness of what you're doing, and looking at those outcomes, because like some of the routines we have, at least for me anyway, are maybe a little detrimental, but not necessarily, but I still do them anyway. So
yeah, I think about the morning routine when I had a 9-to-5 job. I would get to the office, power up my computer, get my cup of tea, come back, wander around, talk to people, check fantasy football stats, look at CNN, look at The Onion. It was a well-crafted hour and a half of just doing nothing that added value to the company. And hopefully they're not watching this, but but yeah, I wasted so much time, and you're surprised. You answer a few emails, you look at the clock, it's 11 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, all right, time for lunch.
Guess it's time to break
today.
How's your fantasy football team doing?
I actually I stopped doing it because I felt that mentally it was distracting, especially now. As much as it hurts me, I was actually watching the game. I was watching the Texas Patriots game that's going on right now. I was looking at both teams. I'm like, I used to have both these players on my team last year. Why don't I do fantasy football? But I have to keep in mind that I have a son. I have less time than I used to. So I have to cut everything that's not essential in my life. And fantasy football was like the first thing to go, or any sort of fantasy sports.
How are you going to have 120 releases next year?
So I wanted to touch with you, because I think it's something we didn't get into as much as I wanted to last time, is the combating of negativity. something that's a recurring theme for me personally, but this is a recurring theme on the show. So how do you shut that, I suck as a writer voice off?
I still get it a lot. I still like that creeping thing. And what helps me is, besides my latest release, I don't look at reviews anymore. I don't want to get in that space. What I used to do is I used to look at reviews every month and just kind of a quick evaluation. But even that, like, I thought, oh, it's like pulling off a Band-Aid. You look at it all at once, you get rid of, you can find out what's going on. But I couldn't figure out any sort of beneficial value to constantly looking at reviews. So there's that. That actually got rid of a lot of the negative feelings that I had. But also, I understand my own triggers. I understand kind of what makes me in a depressive type of state. So again, it's mindfulness. It's just being aware of how you work. And as strange as it sounds, I know that if I have a really good productive Monday, it sets the tone for the rest of the week. So actually, I'm one of these annoying jerks that as soon as Monday comes, like, hey, Monday, let's go get some work done. But for the most part, I actually plan into my week how just make sure Monday, it's like all these things I want to accomplish that I know are beneficial. I just do all of them on Monday. And then I know that works for me, but I can only give advice that helps me. But I would say take time to sit down, and every time that some negative thought pops up, write that down. And if you do that for a weekly, every like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you start to get a good insight on exactly what leads to kind of your own little mind traps and stuff. So I really, to fully answer this question, I understand my triggers, and I just have these kind of if-then plans around making sure that those things don't pop up in my head. And I actually have a plan. If it pops in my head, I will do this activity. So because I think I'm a lot like writers, where the weirdest thing will just set me off, and then the whole day I won't be in the mood to write, or I won't be in the mood to do anything. And I'll sit on my couch and watch Netflix or binge watch it. So you really have to be careful with what sets you off.
Yeah, that is a good point. I think it seems like it's pretty easy to derail these habits, right? You do good for a week or 2 weeks, and then something happens, and then next thing you know, 4 days have gone by and you haven't wrote another word. So
yeah, I would say one additional thing for that, because I have gone what I call kind of falling off the wagon. As much as I teach this stuff, I do have my bad days. I find if you could just convince yourself to do something just light, like go answer these 10 emails, or go set up a marketing campaign, or just write for 10 minutes. Just do something small, and you find it, all right, this is okay, and you continue it. So instead of like beating yourself up, you almost have to forgive yourself for missing a day, and just start fresh. It's all right. Yes, I had a bad day. So what? It's not the end of the world. Do something easy, and you'll find that, all right, this is not so bad. And you can kind of build it back up. So I guess the ultimate advice is if you have something awful happen and you just like you miss an entire week, it's okay. There's no one beating down your door trying to punch you in the face, like I mentioned before. You just don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world.
So consistency and forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
It seems like they almost conflict with one another, but again, it's just one of these things that I kind of like find that just works for me. And that's what I generally recommend anyone who asks.
So we got a question from the site. Kate Morgan asks, that being said, since you don't look at the reviews anymore, what do you do to garner the information from those reviews, since a lot of promo sites need them and Amazon algorithms are triggered by them and stuff like that?
I do have a street team. I do have people when the book is initially launched. The one problem I've been running into lately is when you publish at a faster pace, it's hard to continuously ask people to leave reviews. So I have been experimenting with these. I think it's called Book Reviewer is the tool, but the ones that actually go to Amazon, find like-minded books, get their contact information, and then I just approach them and say, I have a book that's similar to the one you reviewed before. Would you mind taking a look and leaving an honest review? So I do want to say this is not one of those dodgy review groups that you go in there, you exchange reviews. These are actual readers who read real books, and you do open the door to potentially getting one-star review if someone doesn't like your book. But that's kind of how I'm doing it to generate that consistency post-launch. So I do recognize that reviews, that's been kind of like one of the bigger weaknesses of my business, so I'm trying to systematically go after them. But I do have my virtual assistant. She does kind of look at the reviews, and she does keep an eye on anything that might need my attention, like a formatting issue or something along those lines. Like she'll let me know immediately, all right, this is going on. But for the most part, I tend to not look at them. And I do look at my author page, so I know that, all right, this book has 187 reviews. It has a round of 4.5. But I try my hardest not to click on those individual reviews, because that's when the slippery slope happens, at least for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like you ignore them. Like you do have someone looking at them and pulling the feedback out of it.
Yes.
But
I just choose not to. And it's funny because she actually emailed me once. So I was like, all right, take every 1 or 2 star reviews and just send them to me every month. And she's like, these are awful. Because people sometimes get mean. And she's like, how could you like read all this and still be happy? I'm like, I don't know. So it did actually affect me. So I'm like, I don't even want to look at them. Just let me know if something major happens or something that really is a complete false thing. And I might consider rebutting, but I never do, because I believe that reviewers, they don't need to be harassed by you trying to like explain your side of the story. It's just,
Right.
it is what it is.
mm-hmm. Once you have it out there, it is theirs. So,
Yeah.
And then you just let it go.
And then you just seem like you have thin skin, and then other people jump it. It's one of those things that there's almost no positive to it. It's almost all negative outcomes from something like that when you're trying to fight people over what they're leaving on your books.
So how do you turn it off at the end of the night? I'm like, all of this.
Ironically, I have a routine at the end of the night.
Ironically.
I go running around 6 to 7, or go for a walk. I eat dinner with my wife, put the baby down, or at least watch her put the baby down. From like 8 to 10-ish, I watch a little TV, and I read a fiction book. So I purposely don't look at anything business related for like the last 5 hours of the day, and then I just go to sleep. So I try not to be so obsessive where I'm just constantly working. All right, I need to make up the time, so let me work from 10, 11 at night, because I found that when I did that, I would be constantly thinking about it in my sleep. I would be worrying about it. But I find that you almost have to, like a job, you have to punch out. And even if you're working from home, punch out and just like, do other things. And you have to remember why. I guess this goes back to your reason why. You could spend time with the people you love, or do a fun activity, or just do something that's not business related. And I do admit that I have the luxury of being able to work from home. I don't have a full-time job like some writers do. So. But even if you are trying to do it as a side hustle in addition to your full-time job, I would say there has to be a dividing line where you stop work and then you do what's important to you in addition. Like, so stop work, stop your full-time job, stop working on your author business, and then just do something else, because you can't work all the time. And I know Gary Vaynerchuk always loves talking about hustle, and you should always be grinding, but whatever. You need to have some downtime.
Well, that's just it. Like, you have to nurture your passions, but if you get to that point where you're trying so hard to get that like you're saying, if you have so little time to devote, you feel compelled to squeeze every last little bit of it. But that's how you end up building up almost like apathy towards the thing that you actually want to do. That's where anxiety really gets you.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of romance authors, and like, I'm sure you've had romance authors on the show, and their whole model is just get books out there. And I talked to one lady in particular, and she was making like 40, 50K a month. She's like, I can't take time off. I'm like, why? She's like, my readers will hate me, and then they'll start reading other books, and they'll never get back to me. And it seems like a brutal existence. Like, you just always have to be on that hamster wheel, just continuously publish content. And as someone who did for a long time publish nonstop, it does get to you. You get burnt out, and there has to be other reasons why besides money that you're doing all this, and you should be focusing on like what's important to you.
Well, that's the problem with building a business around a passion, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you're never enjoying anything you do, then you might need another reality check and figure something else out. But it is a hard dividing line because I love what I do, but also there's some times where it does become a grind. So you have to find, all right, why has it been in a grind the last couple of weeks? Maybe I need to do something slightly different.
Yeah, that's the question that not enough people ask. Why is it hard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I really want to do this? Is this really worth doing?
Yeah.
Well, it's always going to be something worth doing. This is something that's important to you, but it's ultimately not enough people kind of can take that back seat, look at it, and say, okay, why is it actually difficult? I know I want to do it, so what's the in between?
Yeah, right. Definitely.
So we've come to the point in our show where we ask you what's next. So this is your shameless plug portion of the show, Steve. So what's up next for Steve Scott?
What I would really like to do, and I'm trying to keep this, I'm not too sure how it would apply to fiction audiences or fiction writers as well. But what really intrigued me is Pat Flynn came out with this book, Will It Fly? And he actually created a whole almost business model around just that book. So it's not like he's just writing one book after another. There's a whole free resource section that he has in that book. So it's not just, all right, here's a lead magnet at the front of the book. It's throughout the book that, well, I have this piece of content you can get by joining my joining my free course, and here's another one. And all this could be run through teachable.com. So my idea is there was one book that really took off for me, habit stacking. And I felt there were some errors I made in the writing and the marketing. There's a bunch of things I could have totally done better. So I want to do a second edition of that book, but also build in a whole, I say the word funnel and people freak out. It sounds too marketing, but I want to build a whole funnel around that one book and actually create a kind of a mini course, mini resource section, and just see what can happen with not just writing a book and trying to get people to buy other books. What happens when you build a whole little kind of mini business around that? So that's kind of the game plan for I would say the end of the year or beginning of 2017. I want to just build out something that's not just one book. It's something else. So I find that the model, again, it has become a grind, just writing one book after another. Eventually, you do get a little bit burnt out on that.
Right. So what did you think that you need to improve on with habit stacking? Matter of fact, I think it's a fantastic book.
It's the major complaint, and actually the most awesome 2-star review I've ever read on it it's BuzzFeed but in print form. I love that review. Even though it's 2 stars, I love it.
Ooh, burn.
And it was a long just dress down, but the guy made the point of it's all just simple habits like drink water, microwave a sponge. But I think I didn't do a good enough job of explaining the positive, beneficial outcomes you can get by doing these small habits that only take a couple of minutes each day, but building a whole bunch of habits into a routine. How there's a compounding effect of doing this every single day. So I think I want to do a better job of explaining why this is beneficial long term of doing certain things. And actually, one of the thoughts I have is actually create different scenarios. Like if you want to increase your productivity, here's a bunch of things you can do. You want to increase your health or lose weight, here's a bunch of other things you could do. So I think it should be a little more user friendly. And I don't quite think I did a good enough job explaining certain things. So, that's the beauty of self-publishing is you could take a concept, see that it worked really well, and just publish a second edition and just delete the first book. And it's like you used to start new. So, and actually would be a formalized new edition. Wouldn't be like I was using my same ACIN. I'm actually going to do a whole brand new book and just launch it like there. So start with 0 reviews and just evolve from there.
Now, thank you. We have a question from Chris on our site, and he says he's curious to hear what your background in mindfulness is. It's
in mindfulness?
About, and you've mentioned it once or twice, but he wanted to know, where did you come to the point where you talk about mindfulness? I do have a psychology degree. I forget that sometimes, but it's not like I had formalized training, and that book, a lot of it was written by Barrie, so it was a co-written book. But I just find as the older I get, the more I just start to just appreciate the smaller things in life, and it's really that book and other books. The preponderance of it just comes from my own personal experience, what has worked for me, and I tried to share these little nuggets of knowledge, but.
honestly, I don't necessarily have a background. I just felt that there's a few things that I could share. Mostly, I know Barrie does a lot of, and it's a shame she couldn't join us tonight, but I know she has a lot of good information to share about that.
She absolutely does. We have a couple of questions about your process. One from David.
Okay.
You know, how do you go from initial idea to first draft? And we understand that nonfiction is a little bit different from fiction, and that may have a quicker turnaround. But I'm really interested in hearing, how do you get that and push out so many books?
What I used to do is I just had an idea and I would just think about it for a couple of weeks on my walks and runs and just do a brain dump and just write it from there. But what I've changed, and actually I really think this is a better process, is I will email my list. So I have a basic idea. And actually before that, I'll email my list with 3 different book ideas. I'm like, all right, I'm thinking about writing about these 3 different topics. Just vote, and which one do you want to see next? And just that quick survey, I quickly find what people are actually interested in buying. And I learned this because I published a book and it completely tanked. Like, I still don't think I've made my money back on that one. So when you get burned, you learn how to do things better. So from there, I'll take, all right, this is the one that was voted. Then I'll just email them again. Hey, most 45% of the people on this list express interest in this topic. What is your number 1 challenge? And it's just an open-ended question. I send this out to my list, and usually I'll get back about 200 to 300 responses. And if you don't have an email list, you can go onto a Facebook group. Just find some Facebook group that specializes in that particular topic, and you can kind of do the same thing. Now, for that, I would recommend being a part of the Facebook group before you start just pitching a bunch of questions, because people are like, who the hell are you? Right. So from there, I'll have my virtual assistant. She'll collect all these responses, put it in a Word document, and I'll go read every word for word, every single one of these words. And if I have a particular question, I'll email that person, just ask them to elaborate on their question or a little bit more of what's going on in their life. But really, at the end of the day, with these surveys, I'll get like 10 to 15,000 words of content of like people talking about their real pain points. And then I'll just take this content, put it in around 4 to 6 different categories. All right, they have this particular challenge, that particular challenge, and I'll just try to write a book around that can kind of touch on all those different pain points. And it's a little bit difficult because sometimes I just don't have the answer. So what I will often do with that situation is like, all right, here's a couple good resources. You can learn more about this particular topic. Mm-hmm. But really, it's almost on a book by book basis where I'll just take the feedback from my audience, and then from there, I just do a complete brain dump, everything I know about this particular topic with these 4 to 5, 6 categories. And then I'll just put everything on index cards, scatter the index cards, try to find some sort of like backbone of an outline, stack them in what I think is right order, and I'll just do a real quick and dirty first draft, and evolve it through the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th draft.
That's nice. That's so much different than writing fiction.
Well, sure, like the index card thing does work, and I've done it before. But it's on a, like it's I think with nonfiction, it's much easier for you to, like you said, have that kind of breadth of scope to look back on it and see kind of a larger outline. Whereas with fiction, it's easy to get muddled with things because there's the plot, there's the meta plot, and then you got characters. Oh, those guys.
Yeah, and I'm sure I've played around with Scrivener, but I'm not a Scrivener expert. But I think you could pretty much accomplish the same thing with Scrivener, and it's probably way more slick than just having a bunch of index cards. So I would say for nonfiction, you don't necessarily need Scrivener, but I would say for anybody writing fiction, that would be like the obvious choice for it. But I just find it, again, it's like something that works for me, so I just tend to stick with what works for me.
All right, then. Thank you. We have another question from Kate. Is there anything that you're looking forward to writing, but you don't quite feel that you're ready to write yet?
That was the aforementioned habit stacking, because that one was my biggest success and my worst failure as far as like the overall reviews and just how it got trashed. Mm-hmm. So I wrote the first draft of that 1.5 years ago, and it's still sitting there on my hard drive. And it's just like one of those things that just, it hurt me a lot seeing how bad that book got dressed down. So it's almost like I was afraid to write it, and I'm just finally just making a commitment to put on the calendar. But I would say, like, as far as I'm afraid to write, or I'm sorry, what was the exact question? I want to make sure I'm answering it the way.
Ready to write.
Well, the obvious question for me is fiction. I have a ton of fiction stories in my head, and I love fantasy. I'm well versed in all the dark fantasy. Like that's always been my kind of bread and butter for as a reader. And frankly, I'm scared. I'm scared to write these books, and probably what's going to get me through this is I'm actually going to do NaNoWriMo. I'm going to sit down and try to write my first fiction book with the idea that I'll write it and I'm going to stick it in a file on my computer, and no one's going to probably see the light. It's never going to see the light of day. So that's probably what's going to get me through at least an initial hurdle of writing a fiction book. Is just if I ever release it, it's going to be a pen name. I'm going to pretend like it doesn't exist because everyone knows that the first couple of books are not your best efforts.
So what scares you about that?
It's a combination of I just technically don't know, like what Xavier said before, characters, plot, meta, like all that stuff. I know the fundamentals just because I love learning more about self-publishing. I know the basics, but it's almost like watching a bunch of videos about a subject, but you've never actually had practical knowledge about that. And that scares me. And especially the fact that I do teach this stuff, it's a little scary that if I publish a book and put my name on it, it's like, well, this is the guy who's supposed to teach this stuff, and this book sucks. That's what scares it. It's like, it's almost like if you're considered somewhat of an authority on a subject, that putting something out there that it's like bad, like just people think it's terrible. That's, I don't know. I guess that's the scary part is what would people think if they expect a certain level of quality, I guess.
All right, then we need to talk more about this later because I'm going to make a fiction author out of you yet.
I would love to. I enjoy storytelling more than I enjoy nonfiction. I just found success with this one thing, and you tend to, at least I tend to just focus on what works. But I think long-term fiction is the way to go. I love reading it, so why couldn't I try to write it?
Chris has one last question. He swears. That's what they all say. Seriously, is there, when writing nonfiction, is there a sense of cadence that exists when you're writing nonfiction? Just like in fiction, romance, it goes at a slower pace than if it's a thriller where it has your heart pumping and you use shorter sentences, smaller words, more powerful verbs. Is that a thing in nonfiction writing?
I'm not really sure. I've never thought of a cadence in my life. I tend to like to use small sentences, small paragraphs, small words, just because I know that's personally what I enjoy. And I'm not too sure this really fully answers the question, but probably my favorite writer for nonfiction is Leo Babauta, because if you ever read his Zen Habits blog, his things are just really short, punchy. It's almost like copywriting. It's just real descriptive with using the fewest amount of words. So that's where I tend to go, as I try to just be real, just to the point without being overly, I don't know what the word is for it, but like when you read a nonfiction book and the guy or a girl spends 50 pages just telling a bunch of stories and going on tangents and never quite gets to the point of what they're trying to teach, that stuff drives me insane. I really believe that the industry is going where there's shorter books, especially for nonfiction, that people just want to get the help. They don't want a bunch of fluff for that. So I'm not too sure if that's a cadence question, but that's the way I tend to write. It's just short and punchy.
Ask it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
The way you write your books, the voice that you use to write your books, is it the same voice that you use in your blogs and your emails? Is it more conversational?
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm sorry, I cut you off. What was the last part?
Do you speak in a certain way to get the information to them as fast as possible?
Yeah, I would say I use you and I. I'm not afraid to just write almost like I would, like you say, with an email or with a blog post. I guess the only difference is I just make sure it goes through an edit and actually follows as best as possible the rules of grammar. But yeah, it's definitely really informal, like having a beer over at a bar, just talking to someone trying to explain the concept, or even like this conversation, just trying to just explain something in just normal language, like I don't use, or like to think I don't use really fancy college words. Like I know them all, but I'm not going to use them in my writing because I think if you talk down to people, they're not going to appreciate that.
Right.
Don't take kindly to your fancy college words.
Yeah, exactly.
And nickel and dime words. I got $1. Those big words. Completely. All right. We're going to spend the last 45 minutes of the show talking about...
Only 5 minutes.
No, 15 minutes.
It's sorry. We're gonna spend the next 45. No, seriously.
Strap yourself in, Steve.
It's 9:45 now, and we wanted to take the last 15 minutes to talk about platform.
Okay, cool.
That everybody wants. Wade, why don't you start us off?
Well, so building authority. So what was your way to kind of get going on that and getting people to go, sign up on your email list to begin with? How did you get people interested in you?
I would really say the majority of it was just a free lead magnet in the front and the back of the book. And again, I do recognize I had an advantage. I started back in 2012, where it's a lot harder to kind of build a platform nowadays, 4 years later. So a lead magnet in the front and the back of the book. I did have an existing blog, and so I guess actually starting from way back when I started that blog in 2010. And that really was just one post after another, connecting with authors. The really grunt work of leaving 100 comments in a single day just to get people to notice you and just providing good content. So it built on itself. But the one thing I learned back in affiliate marketing, which was when I started that business back in 2006, is the three things you should do is build an email list, build an email list, build an email list. So that was just drilled into my head that no matter what you do, always get people to join your email list. So the blog kind of fed into my early success with self-publishing, and then I was able to kind of leverage that existing internet business crowd to kind of read some books on productivity. And I kind of slowly got them into the habit frame of mind. By the time that I built up a sizable habit audience, I just completely focused on that. But it really was mostly just the blog, and I always have like a bunch of opt-in forms on my blog, and also the books themselves. But that's really just those two strategies. Just when you continuously publish content, they just kind of built on one another. And I'm starting to evolve into other strategies now, but I just find that continuously publishing content is a good way to build your email list. And the one thing I know people do all the time, which I'm trying to start to do with my blog, is something called content upgrades. So instead of just having a lead magnet at the on your, like a general lead magnet on the top of your blog, every time you have a good piece of content, you just try to get people to join. Or I have a downloadable cheat sheet for this particular topic. So it's like really specialized in that and like whatever they're learning about right now, and you can get people to join your email list. So I think the same concept with books is, instead of just going out and having a general lead magnet for all your books, it's better to have something that's specialized for that particular audience about that particular topic. And I would say with fiction, if you have each one of your series or there's something related to whatever fiction book you should have something directly tied into what they're currently reading. And I think that's the best way to build a kind of specialized following.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's one thing I see a lot with fiction authors, is that when, like with back matter specifically, when it comes to those offers, like you're saying, of just say a promotional short story or something of the like, sometimes it ends up being one of those things where they are kind of like, it's like reaching into a grab bag and getting a random story where, like you're saying, it would be much more apt or better thinking for the author to be putting in a specific short story that mirrors the feel of the book that they've already just read, rather than even throwing the risk out there that they might be into that other short story that you had written X amount of years ago.
Yeah, I would say it makes sense to spend like 10 to 15,000 words, write a short story about one of the best characters in that particular story. So someone that's kind of funny and edgy, all right, here's a day in the life of this one character where they overcame this problem. Just something really small and special. And if you like that book and you got all the way to the end, you probably want to read something that's extra, that's only available for readers. Like you can't buy this book anywhere else. It's just join my list, get this book. I think that's, like, you definitely want to continue the conversation that you're already having with the reader.
Absolutely.
Do you have, I mean, obviously you're in the nonfiction realm, but the blogging issue comes up a lot for fiction writers, and maybe there's some crossover, maybe not, but can you talk a little bit about getting your content out through a blog? There's a lot of debate about whether fiction writers should even bother with a blog. So you obviously are finding success. What do you think?
I found success, but if there's an 80-20 rule, it's an activity that produces maybe 20% of the results. It's a lot. It's a big time commitment with low payoff. And I think especially for fiction writers, obviously I can't speak from my own experience, but from the fiction writers I've talked to, I don't know if it's really a necessary activity as much as I personally like blogging. I think it's better just to focus your time, like leverage all these different book promotion platforms, build up your readership, and go that angle. Because with blogging, you have to have multiple, you have to convert them in multiple ways. Not only you have to convert them to check your content, but you have to almost like figure out who is an Amazon reader. And if they're an Amazon reader, maybe they're not a voracious reader. So it's like you have to continuously get them to say yes to a lot of things, where you manage to kind of like optimize your BookBub campaigns. You can get a lot of readers in a short amount of time. I think it's better. Your time's better spent figuring out exactly where the readers are and talk to readers instead of just having a blog platform. Now I do find it's a good additional activity for me, but I'm not too certain it's not the end all be all for every writer that's out there. I just find it works for me personally. And as far as vetting an idea, I think it's, especially for nonfiction, once your books start to rank for particular keywords or even a piece of content, you can use it to funnel into your books. But I don't know. I like it, but I don't necessarily recommend it for everyone.
Well, let's take, that makes perfectly good sense. So let's broaden the scope out a little bit and just talk about distribution methods in general. Consistent content, because I think those two are kind of linked.
Yes.
What would you when they're trying to decide which distribution method works best for them?
I would say try to figure out exactly what did the 20% activities that produce 80% results, the few things. So I think the best distribution method is to write as many books as possible, so to keep that writing consistent. And at the same time, focus on the few platforms. So I would focus on Amazon Marketing Services. Because those are book buyers. I would say focus on BookBub ads, BookBub pay-per-click, and also Facebook ads. I know that Mark Dawson does really well with them. I've never really done well with Facebook myself, but I know lots of people do well. So I would say focus on the places where you absolutely know readers are, and just try to like do those things. So I guess to fully answer your question, it's don't try to do 200 different activities. Find the few things that work and just obsessively focus on that. And I know before we talked, I joked about not being on social media. Well, the reason I'm not on social media is just because I found it just didn't work for me. So I wasn't afraid to cut the cord on that one and just kind of laser in on a few things.
All right, then. How does networking play in all of this?
I don't know. I did pretty well for the first couple of years without really networking at all. So I'm not too sure if I'm the best example of it, but I find now that network works really well if you're networking with other authors. And, it takes 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 months for a book to be published. Well, where are you going to send your email list in the meantime? I send recommendations of other authors I think they'll like. And if you can get a small group of people to kind of all agree to promote each other's stuff, I think that's a great way to go. But I would say you shouldn't do networking where you approach someone, all right, let's help sell books together. For me, it's always been very organic. And the people that I'm friends with online, I like the fact that I actually don't remember how I met them. The relationship evolved just by a series of conversations, and you find 6 months down the road, oh, can I help you with this book? And it's like what you would do a favor for a friend. And I'm like there's like that guy that goes to network parties and hands out his business cards to everybody. I'm like the exact opposite. I don't have business cards. I feel really like queasy about even approaching someone if I know I have an agenda in mind. So I don't know. I think build friendships with the people around you that have similar audiences and just see what happens. And that's the worst answer for networking, but it's what worked for me.
Well, one of the things that you had listed on here about the 8 habits that you should do to build your platform, I thought maybe you had some ideas on that.
Yeah, it is, but it really is quality over quantity. Don't try to make 100 friends with every single author that's out there. Just find a couple, and it doesn't hurt if you find a couple that actually have a pretty good sizable audience, and try to find ways to help them a bunch of times before you even ask. And that's kind of what I've done, but not really with any sort of intention in mind or any sort of, all right, I'm going to help him 3.5 times, and then maybe after that he'll promote my book. It's more like just find ways to just be cool to people.
Right.
Just be cool. That's great advice. I like that.
Is there any other like advice that like, and we've covered a lot over this episode, but is there any brass tacks type of a thing that you would say to that, like if it was you, back in 2011, let's say, before you started this adventure and you were just about to peek your head in the door, what's something that you'd say to you back then?
I would say, as far as brass tacks, and this is something for back then, but it's actually become really important nowadays. When you're writing books, understand who else writes books that are out there, like what other authors write really similar books. And I just find that for Facebook, for BookBub, for Amazon Marketing Service, all these platforms rely on you really just understanding truly what's in your market, what's out there. And it starts because you can just target by author, you can target it by book title, all that stuff. So if you understand your market as a whole and what's going on, you can tap into that audience a lot easier than, I don't know, I have a couple of business books, maybe I just like target people who like business books, and that's not going to help you sell. But if you know that, all right, my books are similar to David Allen, Brian Tracy, and I'm trying to think of a third productivity person. You can tell I really know my audience. I just call BS on my own statement. It's 11 o'clock my time. I'm tired. Sorry about that. But the point is, if you know your audience in and out, you know exactly who to target. And I think that's just all these amazing book marketing services are just popping up left and right. And I think when you can sit down and figure out exactly who your ideal customer is, who your customer avatar is, that becomes really important, and what other types of books they could read. So back years ago, I just kind of wrote books I thought might be helpful, and it seemed to have worked out. But I would have put a little more marketing intel in my process early on than I did.
Nice.
I'm going to check to see if there's any more questions from the audience. I don't see. Do you see any more in YouTube? Do you see any more in YouTube? While he's doing that, I am going to do thing that I'm really liking to do with authors in the last few minutes of the interview. We're going to do some rapid fire.
Oh no.
Oh, it isn't a test. This isn't a pop quiz. a few fun things. Let's see. First of all, are you a plotter or pantser?
I am definitely a plotter.
Good.
Absolutely. 100%.
The book that you love reading, the book you keep on going back to.
A book called Replay by Ken Grimwood. I've read it probably every year of my life since 1990. So 25 years. It's about a guy who dies, wakes up 18 again, and gets to relive his life over and over and over. And if anyone says it's not Butterfly Effect, it's something completely different, written way before Butterfly Effect. But it's a book that's had pretty much a profound effect on my life, that you don't have a chance to replay your life. You only have one chance. I would just kind of read that to continue. And it's just a very good story too. So I highly recommend it to anyone who's watching this.
Nice. If you could write like anybody, who would you write this fiction like?
I would love to say George R. Martin, but I don't know if I have the patience to write the in-depth world. So I'll go with, since we're picking fantasy, there was an author named David Gemmell who wrote fiction books. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. But he wrote real kind of fast-paced, real dark fantasy. It wasn't a bunch of elves and pixies. It was people doing awful things, but somehow the hero wins at the end. So I like David Gemmell. His pacing is really good.
Right. Nice. And who do you think are your literary legacy? That is to say, literary ancestors. Like, whose work you write now?
I would say what I mentioned before, Leah Babauta. I try to emulate his style as much as possible, short and to the point. And he talked about habits as well. So I like just the kind of real condensed content that doesn't BS people, doesn't tell you a bunch of stories that don't really add value. So I know he doesn't. He's written a couple of books, but I always loved his blog.
Nice.
Excellent. That was good on the rapid fire, Steve. You for 11 o'clock at night. You held up well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so that was really good. We're at the top of the hour. It's like last time, Steve. It goes by fast. You have such great information.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you being on. So where can people find you on the internets, if you will?
I would say two places. So if you go to authority.pub, that has a podcast. We kind of missed the last month or two just because it's actually my fault. But we're relaunching a podcast with hopefully an episode every week or two, or one or two episodes every week. and a lot of other content. So if you just check out authority.pub. And also, if you're interested in my books, just go to developgoodhabits.com, and that has information about my blog, various books I've written, and yada, yada, yada.
Nice. Develop good habits. I like it. Excellent. Yeah, so I want to shout out to the live listeners tonight. We had a very lively group, and thank you so much on the selfpublishingroundtable.com. Also, we are on YouTube Live. Sounds like maybe something wasn't quite going right there with the comments tonight, but we are on YouTube Live now, so you can always check us out there too. But we'd encourage you to go to the website. It's nice to have it interactive. Also, we got lots of good content there as well. We are currently running getting ready to run a promo for romance giveaways. Correct, Krishan? I got that on the right. Are we still taking submissions for that?
I believe that is still... I believe we're still doing that, and I believe that we have a promo coming up. You can find details at selfpublishingroundtable.com. Look across the top, and you'll see which ones we're going to have, because I believe we're doing a romance specific, as well as a general romance.
Nice. And we have a mini episode coming up tomorrow. Erica is going to do a mini episode with Dave Kellett tomorrow. So check out for that. And then next week we have Jessica McHugh on. So we got lots of good stuff coming down the pipe. Was there anything X you need to mention?
If you're still quick, we still have the our survey still up on the website right now. So if you go to selfpublishingroundtable.com and click on the survey cat, he is the adorable cat with the tie on the front page. We want to know some more about our listeners. What brought you to us? What do you like about us? What do you hate about us? Mainly me. Yeah, and we just want to know how we can better give you guys a more enjoyable experience. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So click on the kitty, the survey cat on our on the main page of selfpublishingroundtable.com.
Great, Krishan, you got anything else you want to throw in?
Yes, I want to do. As always, LSR Universe is looking for new citizens, and with instruction manual coming out on October 25th, the continuing adventures of Deuce King Cole as she tries to make sure the dead stay dead. We love to have you there, and you can find me at LSR Universe in Instagram and Facebook.com/ALLAZAR Universe, or to LSR.com. That sounds like it, and I actually see him in front of me. Do you have any last words for us?
Oh, I absolutely do, Krishan. Good night, internets.